Most photographers set their alarms for sunrise. They want that first hint of golden light on the landscape. But if you're pulling into the parking lot when the sun is already hitting the horizon, you might have already missed the best shots of the day. This is pre-dawn blue hour. It's that quiet 30-minute window before the sun even shows its face. It's when the atmosphere acts like a massive softbox, giving you perfect, even light and colors you literally cannot get at any other time of the day. Today, I'm showing you why you need to start hiking while it's still dark out. I'll talk about the benefits and the challenges of blue hour photography. We'll head out into the field to take a shot and come back to Lightroom to complete the edit. Turn these cold raw files into cinematic masterpieces. So stop sleeping in. The magic happens long before the sun comes up. So let's get to work. And stick around to the editing section because there are a few settings that 90% of people ignore, but it's the secret to that cinematic glow. All right, first, let's talk about the color palette. It's called blue hour, but it's so much more than that. Because the sun is just below the horizon, the light is being caught by the upper atmosphere. You get these incredible gradients from deep indigo blues, turning into violets, purples, soft pinks, and then fiery oranges near the horizon line. It creates a natural color contrast that you just can't replicate anywhere else. The quality of light during blue hour is incredibly unique. There are no harsh shadows, it's basically one giant softbox. Everything feels diffused and peaceful and mysterious. If you're shooting cityscapes, this is the sweet spot where the ambient light of the sky perfectly balances with the artificial glow of street lamps and office windows. It creates a balanced exposure that looks high-end and professional. And honestly, the best part, no crowds. Most tourists and casual hikers are either still in bed or already at dinner. You get the most iconic locations all to yourself. There's a stillness to blue hour photography that makes the process feel like a meditation. It's just you, your tripod, and the silence. Now, it's not all easy. The biggest hurdle is the clock. Despite the name blue hour rarely lasts 60 minutes. Depending on your latitude, you might even only have 15 or 20 minutes of peak blue. The light levels drop or rise incredibly fast. You have to be set up and ready before the light hits, because once it starts changing, you're constantly chasing your exposure settings. You also gotta be a little bit crazy. To catch the morning blue hour, you're walking up in pitch black. To catch the evening, you're often walking back to your car with a flashlight or a headlamp. It requires a level of commitment that midday photography just doesn't demand. But it's so worth it when you get those beautiful tones and the perfect atmosphere. Then there's the physical challenge. It's hard to see your buttons, it's hard to see your settings, your tripod legs, you're fumbling with filters and lenses in the dark. If you aren't organized and know exactly what you're doing, you'll lose gear or miss the shot simply because you dropped something in the pitch black. Technically, your camera is struggling too. Autofocus starts to hunt because there's no contrast. You're dealing with long exposures, which means any slight breeze or vibration can ruin a shot. It's a high-stakes environment where precision matters, but pays off for huge rewards. And to beat those challenges, you need the right gear. A rock-solid tripod is a must, kind of a non-negotiable item. You'll be shooting 10, 20, or even 30-second exposures, and sometimes longer. Another must-have piece of gear is a headlamp. This keeps your hands free so you're able to set up your gear and adjust your settings without issue. And for when you inevitably drop something on the ground in the pitch black dark. Another good piece of gear to have is a remote trigger. If you need to shoot over 30 seconds, this is a great piece of gear to use. Even pressing the shutter button on your camera can cause blur. So use a remote trigger if you can, but if not, you can always use your camera's built-in timer. 2 seconds is fine for wider lenses, but if you go to telephoto, I would suggest upping that to a 10-second timer to ensure your photos are pin sharp. And you're gonna wanna shoot raw. You need every bit of detail in those shadows and highlights to balance the scene later. When you shoot during blue hour, you're usually gonna have to lift your shadows a lot later, so shooting in raw maximizes your ability to get the best detail out of your image. Now let's go into the field and try to get an epic blue hour photo on the coast of Northeast Florida.
Good morning, guys. How you doing? We're out here in Flagler County shooting the Coquina Rocks, a little south from where I usually shoot. There's a place I visited about 3 months ago. Came back to shoot it with some cloud. Yeah, how'd that work out, huh? But we have pulled out the wide angle lens and we were trying to get some long exposures of this beautiful rock sitting in the water. We have reflections, subtle pink hues. The clouds are definitely blocking the sunrise, but we'll see what we get. I've just been walking around, getting a few compositions, doing a few test shots, checking everything out. Beautiful out here.
And here's our raw file. If you aren't familiar with raw files, it may look a bit dull and underexposed, but that's part of getting the most dynamic range out of your sensor, and we need to bring it back to life through editing. Always protect your highlights and exposure bracket if needed, but that's what's so great about Blue Hour. The light is even and soft, and you almost always only need one frame for your exposures. We did not use any filters because the Blue Hour light was near perfect, and our exact camera settings for this shot are 30-second shutter, f7.1, and ISO 100. And this was shot on a 16mm Viltrox lens. We focused about a third through the scene and have acceptable sharpness throughout. Now let's take this shot into Lightroom and turn it into magic. All right, guys, so here we are in Lightroom. We have our files. We're gonna go over here to number 3. This is the raw file with no edits, and we'll start working on this. So first thing, we're gonna straighten our horizon. Boop, get that just about right there. And then I think I'm gonna take this down to a 16:9, just to get rid of some of this stuff, and I also just like the wider view. Something like right about there should be good. There we go. All right, so let's just run through a quick edit real quick. We're gonna even out the exposure first. So get that up there, bring those highlights down, boost a little bit of the shadows, a little bit of the blacks up. Okay, that looks like a good base exposure to work with. Take some of these curves down. Make a little S curve, not bad. Yeah, let's bump some of the saturation and vibrance up. Bring those blues and purples back out. Very good. So see, it doesn't take too much. Drop the clarity a little bit just to give it some softness, and then take the texture up a tiny bit to give it a little bit back. Very nice, very nice. All right, from here, you really don't have to do too much more unless you use Photoshop. Let me take this over to Photoshop real quick. So we have this, let's warm it up a tiny bit. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna take this over to Photoshop real quick, edit in, Adobe Photoshop. All right, so here's our file in Photoshop. We're just gonna give this a quick Orton effect real quick. We're gonna take our layer, duplicate it, Command J. I'm gonna go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. You usually wanna do about the megapixels of your camera, but since I've cropped this, I'll come down. My camera's 24 megapixels, so do that about 18. And we'll take that layer and put it into soft light blend mode. See it already doing work. Then I'm gonna take a levels, hold Option, and clip that levels to that blur layer. And then that way we can control kind of how much comes in and out. So we'll bring that just to give that a little bit of glow. Then we wanna take this out about 10 to 20% is usually good. Some people go real heavy and then pull out the blacks here. So you can pull those out of the black so they don't crush your blacks too hard, but you still get tons of glow, see? And to split this, you got this little slider. If you hold Option and grab, you can split that so you'll get a fade instead of just a hard line cut off at the black point there. So this will fade into your blacks, very easy. So you can take that out of the dark and then you can go a little heavier, like up to 50% here. But either way, I'll go to about 20. Then we're just gonna go Apple Save, back over here. And then there's our file. And then you can do a few more tweaks, last minute tweaks there just to get it just how you like it. All right, so very simple edit, crop it, level out the exposure, give it a little bit of S curve, increase the vibrance and saturation, and that was about it. You really don't need too much. If there's one secret, if your colors are off, if you scroll all the way down in your panel here to the very bottom, you'll come across the calibration panel. And this can really affect the colors in your scene. So if you take the red a bit over here, take the blue a bit over here, see we're starting to get a little bit different color. Here, let me do a little extreme so you can see the the difference. Yeah, but with a subtle move, you can definitely pull out some good tones and get everything to sit a little bit better. So there you go, pretty simple and straightforward. You can use Lightroom, but if you want, I would suggest going to Photoshop to do the Orton effect. And yeah, there's our final image.
Yes, it's hot. Yes, the bugs are relentless, and you're definitely gonna spend more time than you want cleaning salt spray off your gear. But that's the barrier to entry here in Florida. And it leaves those hidden gems, the boneyard beaches, the coquina rocks, the mangroves, the cypress swamps, leaves those for us willing to put in the work. If you want to see exactly how I navigate these conditions, check out my series, This is Florida. I'm currently traveling up and down famous A1A along the Atlantic Ocean in search of the best photography spots. So tune in, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.